Welcome, everybody, to Stay Curious. I'm your host, Mark Marquette. So glad you joined us this September 24th, 2025. And next to me is a good astronomy friend of mine, Mr. Ken Verderame. Ken,
How you doing? Good to
great.
see you again.
Yeah, great
Always.
to see you again. Ken's part of we met at the Brevard Astronomical Society when I moved here about 8 years ago. And Ken has got a good background, but he is a Viking Cruise resident astronomer and written 6 books on diverse topics from astronomy, from cruise ships to casino blackjack, huh? In there. And Ken's one of these, all of our astronomy people are Renaissance people, is what I call them. They're all interested in something outside of their jobs. And Ken, being a lieutenant colonel in our Air Force, thank you for your service. He's worked in this space program 41 years working for NASA and the Air Force. You've got advanced degrees in astrophysics, planetary geology, uh, geological engineering, aerospace engineering. I know you're an expert at astrophotography as well as 3D printing of stuff. And he's our resident UFO expert for good reason, because you have been involved with unidentified flying objects back in your
Yes,
younger days, right?
this is true.
How was that?
After graduating from the Air Force Test Pilot School, I had a couple of different assignments. I started out uh, with out at Eglin, doing electronic warfare kind of stuff, flying F-15s, F-16s, F-111s, helicopters, C-130s, things like that. And then after that initial assignment, I went to the RAND Corporation for a year
Rand Corporation.
and
Okay.
on a fellowship, and that's where I got involved in. I went back to doing more space-related things, and I got involved with their reusable space folks doing research in that space, and that kind of led me into getting in contact with some people out at Kirtland, the Phillips Lab, who were working in research in this area, and that led to other places like Area 51 and other things going on. And so one thing kind of led to another. And then when uh, many years later, when I ended up here in Florida working for the JSTARS program, I had an opportunity to go back out west because of what some of the things JSTARS was up to and get back involved with some of these other things as well.
Well,
So
that sets the stage of Ken's credibility here for sure. And he's done several talks on our Stay Curious program over the last 5 years. Thank you very much. We've
right.
reprised a few of them as of course, aliens in our skies, in our world, does perk up everybody's ears, no matter who you are. Everybody's got some opinion or some interest in it. And there certainly is in social media a lot of opinions and maybe some false interest in things that are
This
going
is
on.
true.
But Ken has flown 56 different aircraft, by the way. And I've asked him to be part of our Shuttle Fest 5 because for how many years were you an astronaut instructor teaching astronauts to fly the space shuttle?
A little over four. So I started my first.
That would have been what group of pilots in the 90s,
Yeah, so it was
2000?
it was I got there in 1986 and left in 19 late 1990. So my first I got there right as
After Challenger.
return to flight 26 was the first mission that happened within about 6 months after I got there. It takes about a year to get trained to be an instructor before they unleash you on the crew by yourself.
Uh-huh.
And so by that time, STS-30 had come around, and my first solo crew that I trained was STS-30 that launched the Magellan probe to
Okay.
Venus. That was the big,
Yeah.
that was
I'm
Norm
thinking
Thagard was on that one as Mission Specialist 2.
uh,
Dave Walker
uh,
was the commander.
a woman was on there, I
Yeah,
believe.
Mary
Yep.
Cleave was,
Mary Cleave.
and Mark Lee were all the three MSs, and then Dave Walker was the commander, and Ron Graby was the pilot on his
Okay.
second
We
mission.
see Mark Lee supports the astronaut encounter us out at the
Right.
Kennedy Space Center a lot on there. So, you interested in him coming to Shuttle Fest 5 there? Steve Jokums up there, and he's up there at the Lake County Spaceport at Fox Lake. He does a lot of decals for shuttle thermal
nice.
protection underbelly and stuff like that. So we do want to get your questions in there. And Robert Law up in Dundee, Scotland says he's very interested in UFOs, prefer to use the proper name of UFOs
Yep.
and not
Same with me.
uh,
I don't use the word UAP. I like UFO. That's what they are.
which you're going to talk about these congressional hearings. And I've heard Ken talk many times. And what I'm getting, a lot of smoke screens going up there, a lot of diverting attention with renaming UFOs UAPs, for Christ's sakes. I mean,
That's true.
but he's got some real points he wants to make of things that we definitely can call facts. Several, you want to research more about UFOs, grab a pen and pencil. He's going to tell you some things to look at up there. But I also wanted to mention, we got the shuttle instructor in there, and I think you'll be an excellent addition to Shuttle Fest. 5, that's my way of saying hi, Marty Winkle, my co-producer. What do you think about a panel talking about training astronauts, Marty, with Ken on there and an astronaut or two?
I think that's great. I mean, I haven't heard of any panels talking about training astronauts in the past. I think that'd be great.
Yes. You did try to be an astronaut, applied several times,
Yes.
rejected how many times?
So I was a finalist 5 times,
Okay.
unfortunately, and never quite got over the hump. I got a lot of friends who were there.
Pam
What-
Melbourne's one of your
Yeah,
friends?
so probably one of the best ones, Pam Melroy. She and I were classmates at Test Pilot School, class 91. But we sat next to each other and worked together for the entire time. That's where I met her. And then, of course, she went on a couple of years after, got selected, and then most recently was the deputy director of NASA for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I have talked to some people that have selected astronauts, like Mr. J. Honeycutt and others like that. And he basically said, once you get into that interview, everyone's qualified.
sure.
We're trying to find who's going to work together, and they definitely are trying to find things to ask you to push your buttons and see how you'd react. But doggone it, you'd have made an excellent astronaut for sure.
Well, thanks.
And they got 10 new ones the other day out of 8,000 applicants.
Right.
6 women and 4 men were chosen recently. We talked about them, but so I'm setting all this up because Ken is just not a UFO interest guy that's been reading all the books and forming your own opinions. He is a test pilot school graduate. Okay, that's some pretty serious stuff there. But you have a way of bringing this complex thing down that I think people enjoy. And so we're going to hear from Ken here just a second. I did want to brag about another noisy rocket. Woke me up this morning at 7:30. This is Chris LeMarie. His excellent photograph of IMAP is his space probe in there, an astronomy mission to study the influence of the sun at the very edge of the solar system. We like that kind of research,
Cool.
don't we?
Yeah, it's good to
for
see that
sure.
kind of stuff.
But great shot, Chris, there, the exhaust. You can see in the column up there's a little reactor thruster puffing out there. It looks. I don't think that's a sunspot. There's anyway, great job of shooting that picture. And you never know who's going to come to the Space Museum here, Ken. And that's Bob Seek, who launched 51 shuttles, but he was so much more as the director of shuttle operations for a couple decades. And that's Lee Sterrick, the fireman. Lee was in fire gear for the Apollo launches and everything. They were both here coincidentally at the same time. And Lee is 88, and Bob Seek is 87. And so we got to talk. I go double snowman, huh? And Seek said when he's double snowman next year, he wants to celebrate with one of the greatest cars ever made, the Oldsmobile 88 Rocket. They call it the Rocket 88.
Amazing.
I couldn't pass this up with you on here. I know you love cars and
Very
things.
nice.
And there's 1950
Ooh, wow.
Rocket 88 Oldsmobile there. Now that's a car.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
That is a beautiful, beautiful car there. So just a little diversion here as we get warmed up to what in the world is going on with Congress. pretending to hold serious, excuse me, I'm sorry, that's my opinion, holding serious congressional hearings where everybody seems to want to have a sound bite and nobody wants to follow up on the facts, ma'am. Just give me the facts. So give us some of the facts there, my friend, as we look at a slide here of UFOs in 1966 as the Paul Calley, our son of father of our friend Chris Calley. That's his artwork on there. And then the new phenomenon and what, of course, this is a heavily masked picture. You've told me if you see something like this on the right, that's not what it looks like. They've doctored it up there for the public to tell you what it looks like, right?
Yep.
So tell us what you want us to know, Ken.
So what I want to do is I'm going to go through a really quick summary of what I think are major milestones in UFO research that if you're new to this space, but you're interested, these are things that are all factual and you should go and look at them and read the material for yourself so you can help form your own opinion and get yourself up to speed on what's currently going on, which is what we'll talk about here shortly with the current congressional hearings. So we're going to start in 1952. So people always ask me, where's the smoking gun? How come they don't land on the White House lawn? Well, I got news for you. They didn't land on the White House lawn. They flew directly over the White House, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times. July 19th, July 20th, July 26th, July 27th, 1952.
And there's photos of it.
Well, there's more than photos, right? They're tracked on radar. The Air Force scrambled fighter jets. The jets chased them. The pilots debriefed and talked in detail about what they saw. The UFOs were witnessed by hundreds of people over both weekends. 100% real event. It was the headline of every major newspaper around the world. That's the first one. Later on that year, the director of science intelligence for the CIA, a guy by the name of Marshall Chanwell, you can look him up, through a FOIA request, we got the following quote.
FOIA, tell us what the...
So FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act, if you're not familiar with it, 1976. It allows any U.S. citizen to ask the government to provide any documentation that's official government correspondence on any topic that's not declassified. And this is how we get a lot of our information, but because prior to 1976, the government used to document everything with no fear of the public ever finding out, because it never could be released. Well, enter FOIA in 76. Now all of a sudden they legally have to release that. And so you find out lots of interesting things that government officials were telling each other that they didn't want the public to hear. Okay. And one of the things was, this is a direct quote from the scientific director of intelligence for the CIA. He said 1952 and 53. He said, quote, "Phenomena seen at such altitudes over sensitive military bases in such maneuvers that they are not attributable to natural phenomena or known types of aircraft." That's 76 years ago. All right, next smoking gun, called the Admiral Wilson Davis Memo. This is a memorandum that was found in the private papers of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who was an Apollo astronaut, a moonwalker.
Good friend of our museum, by the way.
And he was in his private paper, so he had no intention of ever releasing it to the public. After his death, a researcher was allowed access to his papers by his widow. In that, they found this memo. It's a 15-page memo. It's on the internet now in its entirety. You can go read every word of it. And in that memo, it outlines a conversation between Admiral Wilson, who was, and I forget what position he held within DOD at the time in the intelligence world, and Dr. Eric Davis, who was a senior physicist with Aerospace Corporation. And basically, the memo talks about a crash retrieval reverse engineering program that the U.S. has and has been going on since the early 1950s. And there's a lot of other stuff in that one as well. Okay, next one, a little more recent, so-called Slide 9. This is a slide taken out of a classified briefing by Dr. Davis. You remember Dr. Davis, right? He was briefing the Undersecretary of the Air Force as part of the UAP task force about 2 years ago. Okay, this is a quote that I pulled out of that slide. There's a bunch of classified stuff in there. This is not classified. And the quote from Dr. Davis was, "Whatever the phenomena is, it's capable of altering human perception." And he goes on in the briefing to detail a specific example in France of this actually occurring, along with all the photographs, which are all classified and none of you have ever seen and probably ever will. But all that information is real and out.
Huh.
Next one, the so-called metamaterials recovered from Roswell. Okay, there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Gary Nolan. If you're familiar with this, you probably heard of him. He is a Stanford professor, well known in the biomedical research. He's got numerous patents for medical devices to be able to do analyze brain tissue, things like that. Just a phenomenal guy. He's recently got involved about a year or so ago in the UFO research. He was given these materials to analyze with some of his devices. Here's what he found. Number one, the material was clearly manufactured. Number two, the ratio of materials used has never been seen by anyone in material science in that combination before, and the various layers were constructed at the atomic level, atom by atom. It's a combination of, and I forget what alloy this is, it's MY, you can go look it up, my mind escapes me, but MY, zinc, and bismuth. And now, if you talk to theoretical material scientists, they will tell you that that combination of alloys is able to create a theoretical device. We haven't been able to build one called a terahertz waveguide. And supposedly what a terahertz waveguide can do, if you were able to manufacture one, is it can channel electromagnetic energy waves, which is theorized to be one of the propulsion systems for these NHI craft. All right, very recently, a couple months ago.
And that's from the Roswell.
That
Some
was
of the
material from
material covered
1947. That's correct.
Contains exotic chemicals that we've never seen put together in this way on Earth.
And it was, and the most interesting part of that is literally manufactured at the atomic level. We do not have the capability to create materials atom by atom like this material seems to have been created. So not micrometers, atom by atom layer at the atomic level. Pretty amazing. All right, in the last couple of months, something called the Immaculate Constellation Program. This is a DoD program. This has nothing to do with Arrow that everybody's familiar with Congress. This is a classified program that is collecting and quantifying UFO sightings and encounters. And its sources are the most highly sophisticated intel and DoD systems we own. Okay, they're intel systems, they're imagery systems, there's signals intelligence, and there's measurement systems. Most of those, or many of them, are classified systems, and they're using them to collect information. People there's a summary document on the internet posted that talks about what the Immaculate Constellation Program is. It's a couple pages long, and it gives examples of things that have happened that they're reporting on. And this is important because what DoD does is when a program that is classified gets known publicly for whatever reason, by mistake or otherwise, what they do is they'll take the program, they'll create a new classified program, they'll move everything out of the program everybody's now heard of, and they'll create a new category and hope everybody focuses on the one you've heard of while this one going on. And so Immaculate Constellation is the real classified program going on behind the scenes, not what Arrow is doing, which is all just a bunch of nonsense.
And ARROW was the acronym for
Arrow
that.
is the
This is what the Congress.
this is what Congress
named
right,
a deep dive into the UFO.
So DoD established, right? They started out with the UAP task force. It got changed to Arrow, and it's the Advanced Anomaly Resolution Office.
Okay.
And they're supposed to be collecting all the information and analyzing it. They're doing nothing of the sort. They are Project Blue Book 2.0. It's just a whitewash and just a cover up. All right, last one. People say, where is this stuff? Well, get a pencil. I'm going to tell you exactly where it is, or at least two places.
Okay.
The first one is Lockheed Martin's BG Complex, 23E00 Empire Ave in Burbank, California. And the
way.
And the second
You're
location.
talking about alien materials that
Absolutely.
we are
Yep.
re-engineering.
So you need to
Retro.
understand these materials that are, the crash retrieval program is not inside DoD anymore. It was moved out to private contractors a long time ago to protect it from FOIA.
That was something that you brought out. If the government maintained control of this through the Freedom of Information Act, it would eventually come out where they are. So they give it to a contractor like Rockwell, Boeing, somebody like that, and say, now it's yours. They're a private company. the public
FOIA
doesn't
doesn't-
have to they you know you
FOIA
can,
doesn't apply to a private contractor,
Right,
so you
right,
can't
so-
FOIA Boeing and ask them for
That's
anything.
pretty clever there, Ken.
All right.
So yes,
So that's Lockheed Martin, and then the other one.
Burbank, California. Johnny Carson would like that.
Yeah, he might be
And
involved. In it.
Laugh-In too is from Burbank.
And then the other one is Northrop Grumman's Plant 42 at 3520 East Ave, M Street in Palmdale, California. Those are the two places we know. And again, the reason we know that,
He's got the addresses.
is because there have been 45 whistleblowers who are either currently in the legacy program, the crash retrieval program, or have been in the legacy program. So firsthand witnesses who have been briefing Congress at the classified level over the last year and a half, and they have reported this exact information along with a lot of other about the program. So when you hear Congress says we don't know anything, not true. There are subsets of Congress, which I can talk about, that know exactly what's going on because they've been briefed. Now, lastly, people ask me, what can I do about this if I'm interested? Very simple. Write your representative. And I'm talking about an actual written letter. Don't send an email. Don't call them on the phone. That works. But I can't tell you the amount of attention a hand or a typed written letter gets from a congressman. It goes literally to the top of their pile with their constituents that they pay attention to. And here's what you want to tell them. Number one, this is an important topic to you. Number two, you want to demand that Senator Schumer's bill on UAP disclosure get passed in its current form without alteration. Demand the UAP Whistleblower Protection Act be strengthened. Demand the subcommittee, which we just witnessed, which we'll talk about, be given actual subpoena powers. Because it's a subcommittee, it doesn't have subpoena powers. That is only permanent committees that have that. They can be granted that by their parent committee. They're trying to do that now, but they don't have that. And you need to put pressure on Congress to give them subpoena to subpoena the uncooperative witnesses who know what's going on. And then lastly, declassify the basic information, right? NHI are real, crash retrieval reverse engineering program is real, but keep all the technologies that are associated with it classified to protect our national security. All right, that's the history. Those are the things, if you care about or interested in this space, you want to go take a look for yourselves. And there's hundreds and hundreds of pages and books written on all those topics.
Excellent outline there. Ken, hand me my sheet there. That's
This one?
right. Yeah, that's that was sort of my prep for you here. Some of the takeaways I pulled off the internet about the government hearings that were titled the first week of September, quote, "Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection," unquote.
Yes. So I will tell you, they're on that. If you look at that subcommittee,
You laugh at that. Yeah.
there are a couple of committee members who are very serious about trying to get to the bottom line here. Mark Burchett from Tennessee is one of them. The chairwoman, Congressman Luna, is another one. And there's one of the congressmen who actually released that amazing video to everybody's surprise at the hearing of the Hellfire missile bouncing off the UFO, which we could talk about. Though they are very serious and committed to this. There are other people on that committee, and you can just listen to them. They ask totally irrelevant questions. They were given political speeches. You can just ignore them.
Yeah. You got questions for Ken here? Please, Marty will relay them on here. I'm looking at my smart tablet. We've got a lot of good people watching today. Elena at Hikaries in South Africa. We got Foray Do Osaka Joe's back today. And Tom Usiak, happy to see Tommy on Friday on our show, the photographer. We're working on the install of your House of Blood remote system today. Rosalie Jubilee, she loves watching our program here. So got some questions. Let's hear them. One of the things that they're trying to, the whistleblowers, okay, and those of you hope you know what a whistleblower is, but that's a person who wants to spill the beans on something going on that they fear for their job. So they want protection so that they don't get fired for telling the truth. This happens a lot in industry and so forth. I'm not sure where the term whistleblower comes from. Must be like a
Yeah, I never looked at
1930s gangster thing or something, maybe. I can fantasize, can't I, about that? But, one thing was pointed out, there is a journalist named George Knapp who's quoted in this, and he says that since the late 40s, we're told nothing to see here, just keep on driving by, don't worry about it, we've got it under control. But what we are finding are these unidentified objects are impeding, if not watching, our military exercises. They are very savvy about our military over nuclear installations. These are favorite places, right? Where
So,
they've been seen.
yep.
Talk about that.
So there's a very long and well established and well documented by DoD history of UFOs over military installations, watching military exercises, and probably most disturbingly over our nuclear assets. So beginning back with the atomic testing, there are hundreds of cases, literally, of UFOs sighted during our early nuclear weapons testing. And then later on, once we established actual nuclear capable DoD armament, UFO incidents occurred numerous times over things like our ICBM missile silos, literally. I mean, there's actually three very famous cases, two of them which are known, one of which is not known very well. The first one happened in the US, the second one happened in Russia. And the first one, 1976, Malmstrom Air Force Base, I think it was, and a UFO was seen entering the secure area across the fence line of the missile base, directly over a silo. The security team on the surface saw it put what it described as a beam of light down to the silo. It stood there for about 10 minutes. And during this time, the two officers down in the silo who were responsible for operating the missiles said that their entire missile operation went dark. So they could each crew of two controls 10 nuclear missiles. All 10 literally went inoperative. They could not. So for about 15 minutes, they could not launch a single weapon if commanded by the president to do so. The UFO eventually left. The systems all, quote unquote, magically came back online. They ran their checks, perfectly normal. SAC, which was owned nuclear missiles at the time, this back in the 70s, of course, came out and sent a very large team and did, as you can imagine, quite an investigation. Medical testing of personnel, all sorts of stuff. Their conclusion, they could find no anomaly with any system. They have no explanation to this day of what happened. Now, that, as disturbing as that was, when George Knapp went to Russia in the 1980s during Glasnost, he was able to go and meet with a lot of top officials from DoD, a lot of their scientists. They were very eager to talk to him about the U.S. UFO research program because they have one and had one as well. And what they told George is they said, look, we know it's not ours. We know it's not yours. We'd really like to know what you think about what's going on here. They showed him hundreds of pages of classified documents about their program. Well, George, being the investigative reporter he got copies of those documents, and he just took them on an airplane and flew home with them. And people were like, how can you get classified documents out of Russia? Turns out, at least back then, the only thing Russians did is the top page of their document was marked classified. The rest of the 200 pages, it looked like a book. So he just took the classified pages, threw them away,
Cover off.
and put them in a suitcase, took some on his carry-on, and flew home. He's had them all translated since then. And one of the incidents in that documentation was similar to the U.S. at a Russian ICBM site, but this time, when the UFO came over the site, the nuclear weapons were turned on to launch. They were one step from launch. The Russian officers could not disarm the missiles. They just sat there in stunned silence about to watch World War III happen. After 10 minutes, The UFOs left, the systems went back to normal, and the systems were down to ready to go with no issue. So, and people ask me, well, you think the UFOs communicate with us? Pretty sure that's a message. It may not be speaking to us, but I think they were telling us that we have capabilities that, if necessary, we can intervene. You guys should probably think about taking a different direction than where you're going. But those documents, those hundreds of pages, were entered in the congressional record at the hearing 2 weeks ago. George Knapp provided them all, so they're part of the official congressional record. So anybody can go and get access to them now and read all that Russian documentation that details their UFO program as well.
Fascinating and all true. Okay. Ken would not be talking about like this about this stuff. You've got such an extensive military background. We've heard you talk many times, even under some dark skies. Sometimes you tell us a few things so that we don't sleep well at night. So, I'm going to ask a few questions since many of you haven't come up with any questions yet. How do we sort out the crackpots? How do we sort out what this information layer is?
So probably the simplest thing to do is there are a couple of, there's a bunch, but there's a few more of the well-known researchers in the UFO research space that have been doing this for literally 20, 30 plus years. They're well respected. People like George Knapp, people like Russ Coulter in Australia, and then some of the younger folks. But Jeremy Corbell's another one. They go through great pains to research the validity of anything before they ever talk about it in public. So you can go to the archives of anything they've done. If you have a question about something you've heard or seen, they've probably already covered it and have either said, yeah, we've figured out that we believe what's being reported is true, or no, we've not been able to verify it, so it's unknown, or no, this is just utter nonsense. You can safely ignore it. It's meaningless.
Well, everybody watches TV, and the Ancient Aliens series is quite popular with Giorgio and his stand-up hair and the other 3 or 4 people that come on there that have gained some respect from that community. Can we believe them, what they're talking about on Ancient Aliens and things like that? How do we classify these popularizers of it?
So I would say yes and no. So this gets in a little more, you're going to have to do a little more digging to separate what's going on. Because a lot of when they talk about a topic and they introduce it, typically the initial information that they provide is 100% real. They found something, they show it, document, artifact, whatever, okay? And you can go and look at that and you can say, yep, those are real things. Then they subtly start to speculate about its meaning. And that's the point where you need to stop and say, okay, what's fact and what's speculation? Now, there's nothing wrong with speculation as long as you understand it for what it is. Right? What I try to explain to people is, I said, if you're not a trained scientist, which I get most people are not, you tend to subconsciously invoke your belief system when faced with a topic that you have no background in and one that might challenge your worldview for whatever reason. And so what a layman does is if they've got no background in UFOs, no background in science, and they're presented with something, even if it's already been proven by science to be a real part of this, their belief system comes to the front subconsciously, and they go, that can't possibly be true, and they move on without any study of objective facts or reality. Now, what a trained scientist does when faced with the same situation is they'll go, okay, I see that. I don't have a background in it. I don't know if it's true or not. So instead of just making a snap subconscious decision, what we do is we say stop, and we say the words, I don't know. Okay. And at that point, you then go, if you're interested, and you go research to see if you can discern facts, to be able to determine if it's really natural, objective reality or not. And so you need to go in there and do more research from lots of different sources about, is what that individual telling me, could that be true? Is it verified by other independent sources that may have nothing to do with that? That's the easiest way to say fact X is true, because an independent source verified it that isn't trying to sell a book, isn't on a movie deal or watching a TV show. They just independently verified it.
I've been trying to encourage people to be skeptical inquirers.
Absolutely.
And with today's artificial intelligence and taking over so many things in our everyday mundane society, it's got great places, I think.
Sure.
I particularly with data processing and
Yep.
so forth,
Agreed.
seeing trends and so forth. But photos and writing, which has been my thing as a liberal arts guy all my life, don't trust nothing you see unless of what you hear out there. Enjoying this conversation with Ken Verderame. Ken, one of the things that we mentioned earlier that I'll remind everybody is you've been a resident astronomer doing tours on Viking cruises, just not on astronomy, but other things. You've been doing that for what, 15 years or something like that. But I wanted to, the world view. You have a great perspective on the world view as being a tour director. And how many years have you done that?
So 2018 was the first cruise I got to do. That was actually with Princess Cruises. So I started out as if you've ever done cruises, there's this thing on a cruise ship called an enrichment lecturer or a special interest lecturer. And they talk about all sorts of topics. And what cruise ships do is they invite experts in various fields to come on board. And as part of the entertainment during a cruise, they give lectures on. So I started doing that on astronomy and space exploration in 2018. And then Viking Cruises has an additional thing they do is they have what they call resident astronomers on board a couple of their ships. And in addition to giving lectures about astronomy and astrophysics, we also do nighttime star parties where the captain will turn off the lights. We'll go outside in the middle of the ocean and I'll give a tour of the night sky. We do question and answer sessions about astronomy where people can come and literally ask me anything they want, and we try to answer them. And then we give, there's a planetarium, believe it or not, on these two ships. And I live narrate a planetarium show based on what part of the world we're in at the time. And so
our friend Jonathan Moore's a friend of ours, and he's on one of the cruise ships. I thought it was.
And I will tell
Viking
you,
cruises, but
what you'll find is that, with cruise ships, there's an international group and not just Americans that come. And I've found that not most, but a large portion of the international guests are typically much more open to what's real and what's not real than Americans are, which is interesting. In fact, I have one story I tell all the time because it's kind of unbelievable. I had finished one of my alien exoplanet lectures, and a gentleman comes up to me after the lecture, because we do questions and just sit around and talk for a while. And he said he was either a scientist or had a science background. I don't remember which one, but clearly understood the scientific method at the minimum. And he looked at me and he said, now all that stuff you just talked about with aliens and crash, that's all just fake, right? It's not really true. And so I looked at him and I said, so what makes you think anything I told you is not true? And there's a direct quote from him. He said, well, if it were true, I would have heard about it on the news already. Literally, that's what he said. And at that point, I'm like, okay, we don't have much to talk about, do we? But that, as scary, as unbelievable as it is, you still hear that kind of view from people. And I don't know what to do about someone like that. I can't help that person wade through what's true and what's not true if you get your life's information by listening to the news.
Yeah, so of course, we're here at a space museum, and occasionally people say something that the moon landings were a hoax. And I used to want to jab slap them and yell at them. And today I just say, I guess you don't have a very good education.
Because I've had people do that to me as well. I said, here's the easiest way to do it. I said, you're familiar with the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter that's been circling the moon for 20, 30 years, taking pictures of the moon? Hopefully they are, or they can go look it up. So number one, if you don't, go look up, that's a real spacecraft orbiting the moon. Okay. all the photographs that they take are part of NASA's archive. You can go look them up and you can see them for yourselves. Go look at the number of photographs of the lunar surface where there's all those funny man-made objects that we put there for the moon that are visibly on the
Yeah.
surface. So if we didn't go, how did those objects get there?
Well, that's a whole other program with you one day there. Ken does a lot of good programs, but
sure is.
the international, you know, what do you find there? You alluded to that the Europeans are more, or maybe inclined to believe that we are looking at alien.
Yeah, they don't seem to have the prejudice that a lot of
That's
Americans do that,
prejudice.
this is, and I think part of it is because, right, if you think about what's been going on since the 50s with Project Blue Book and the very sophisticated, very intentional work by our government to get the American public off this topic and just think that it's all just a bunch of nonsense and stop paying attention to it. Over in other countries, they didn't have that, and so they didn't get conditioned to believe that it's just a big hoax. They could look at it for what it really is.
Any
and
other countries looking into it like we are, like
They are.
France
The Brits are big into this. The Chinese are certainly doing it. The Russians are clearly doing it. Some other countries, if they're doing it, it's probably much quieter, but absolutely, Great Britain has a huge research program going on, and the ones to worry about are not our British friends, but the ones to worry about, of course, are China and Russia.
Electromagnetism seems to be the key to this, and also scares a little bit more that we have high resolution photos of these objects.
We have thousands of them.
And I mean, you told me one day, like, we can see the side of them like this,
Yep.
Mark,
So
and in 5K
Oh, yeah.
resolution.
Llewellyn, everybody
And
who,
so what's the weird things about these objects? I'm setting you up there to.
so one thing I'll preface before we talk about details is Lou Elizondo, who was the head of ATIP, that everybody's probably familiar with. He's asked all the time.
Lou Alessandro.
Lou Elizondo. He's asked all the time about, how come everybody's got a cell phone? Why all we ever see are these fuzzy pictures, right? This is all a bunch of nonsense. And he kind of paused for a sec. He's very deliberate before he answers questions. And he goes, let me tell you, the images that have been released to the public through ATIP and UFP Task Force and now Arrow, they represent less than 1/10 of 1% of all the photographic evidence we have. And they represent the poorest images we have because we know exactly what these things look like. We have 4K, high resolution images, tons of video and images. We just don't know who's operating them and where they come from. We know exactly what they look like. There is very clear imagery, and you see several different variations of shapes. You see the classic
Textures. What is it? A metallic texture? Is it
mostly it's a metallic like texture that there are no rivets, seams, or joints. It seems to be a single structure, which, if you think back to the Roswell material, that it was apparently manufactured at the atomic level, that would make sense. If that's the manufacturing process, that they do that somehow, you wouldn't need rivets and joints like we do, because you can create the material atomically and make a solid piece of.
Give us an analogy of the atomic level. Let's say like you're making a scarf.
Yeah,
Okay, so instead of the yarn, you're creating each individual atom of the yarn.
So take a scarf or take any fabric that's made out of tens or hundreds of thousands of individual pieces of yarn. Take an individual piece of yarn, okay, which a lot of time is woven. Take one strand of that, which is another order of magnitude smaller than that, like the width of a human hair, and then take that and go 2 or 3 orders of magnitude smaller than that until you get down to the individual atoms that literally make up that human hair. That's how this material was created, apparently, layer by layer. So a layer of atoms of a certain element, and then another layer, and then another layer. And so tens, hundreds, millions of
Thank you
layers.
I wanted to get that across to everybody. Something that's just truly alien in there.
Yes, we have
Uh,
no capability to do
getting,
that.
getting back to what they look like.
So triangles, classic triangle, like
all right.
the Phoenix Lights back in 1997.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a classic triangle.
Pyramid triangles, things like this on Earth, maybe mimicking this.
Could be.
Oh, do we see windows, exhaust ports, intakes, stuff
So
like that?
there's a couple of images of what I'll call a classic saucer-shaped USO, a disc with kind of a dome shape. And when they blew up the image, you could see what looked like, I'll just call it window structure. There was some kind of structure on the surface that looked like ports or window or something. So we've seen that once in a while. The tic tac, the so-called tic tac shape, which is if you think of a tic tac mint, they literally look like that. They're oblong shape. That's what Commander Fravor saw in 2004 off the Nimitz. The object that the Hellfire missile was fired at, that it bounced off of, that was a tic tac shaped object that was
Yeah,
being
this
tracked.
is amazing. Look that up if it's on YouTube, that they fired a
Yeah.
tank destroyer missile at a UFO, bounced off.
So at the hearing 2 weeks ago, one of the congressmen on the committee, he had been given a sanitized video from a whistleblower, and he just said, "I'm going to play it. You'll understand what it is." And basically, what it is it's a Reaper drone following a tic tac shaped UFO. It's off the east coast of Yemen in 2023, and you can clearly see it's tracking it. Then off screen, there's a second Reaper drone. And if you know how to read Reaper drone symbology, that's not been hidden on that thing. You can see when the second Reaper drone turns on its laser targeting designator on the object. Okay, clearly that happens. Within a tenth of a second of that laser designator hitting the UFO, you see the UFO, which is traveling this direction. You see it do this. This is folks. Let's go in this way. You see the UFO do this, point in the direction of the laser, and then off screen, you see the Hellfire missile come into screen. It hits the UFO, and it bounces off. It doesn't designate, doesn't do anything. Just literally it bounces off, and the UFO gets shaken a bit because there's kinetic energy when it hit it, of course, and then it just goes on its merry way. And there's classified footage for another 5 minutes of that UFO just going on its merry way, like it's just having a day in the park.
Ejected 3 little probes out
And
of
it
it too,
ejected
that
3
flew
probes.
out. It wasn't debris.
It was not debris because those 3 objects stood co-altitude with the UFO for several minutes after it continued to be tracked. And when you look at a detailed high-resolution version of that still frame of those 3 objects, they are a irregular shape, and all 3 are literally identical. So they're clearly not debris. There's something the UFO released, and the Hellfire missile didn't detonate.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything. It was like a ping pong ball being shot
It
at.
does. It looks like Pong.
Yeah.
Actually playing on there.
It
when
is
you
the
showed
most
that to our
amazing
astronomy
video
club.
you'll see. Just
Yeah.
look it up. It's even major news outlets were finally carrying that. It's been all over NBC, CBS, MSNBC, you name it.
Well, I hope you're enjoying this conversation with Ken Verderame. I am. We talked about whistleblowers. We're talking in context to what the government's trying to do, and basically more smoke screens to divert us from the real attention that are these objects possibly invading national security.
There's no doubt that these objects are seen, and very recently. It's not like we haven't seen one for 20 or 30 years. It's happened up and including 2025. They are seen over sensitive military installations in the U.S., certainly overseas, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, you name it. Every place we've been, the last 20 years with the global war on terror, there's lots and lots of footage of these things being tracked. So they're clearly, whatever they're doing, they are monitoring what our military is up to.
And other militaries.
And
around
other
the world.
militaries, well, not just us.
So why don't they just be like Mars Attacks and just the movie, and just take us over?
Yeah.
Why?
So
Why is that they've
the $1 million
they're
question.
so superior?
So lots of this is we're now going to enter the world of speculation. I certainly
Yeah,
don't know
okay.
better than anybody else. Lots of people have lots of different ideas about motivation for what's happening. And so, some of the motivation is determined by where you think these craft and the beings who operate them emanate from, right? So there's a couple different theories that have gained popularity in the last couple of years.
Okay.
There's the classic theory that they are a civilization from another star system, pure and simple, okay?
All right.
They have figured out technology to be able to travel vast distances in very short periods of time. And so the distance problem that we have to go to like our nearest star doesn't apply to them.
And we would be the most appealing planet in this solar system with water on the surface.
Right.
And other ones being cold or too hot. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's that. Then a couple other theories that have started to gain popularity, one of which is something called the future human theory. And this theory postulates that they're not aliens from another star system, that they are us from the future, that they have figured out time travel. You can believe that or not. I'm not here to tell you that that's true or not true, but this theory says that they have come back in time, and then they start speculating even more about why they've come back in time. But the researchers that believe this, and there's an interesting book out that talks about this in detail, is that they say when you look at biology on our planet, right? Humans are what? We're bipedal. We stand upright, so we got 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and we're symmetric about the long axis. That's our biology. When you hear aliens being talked about in World UFO, they're typically talked about as short, bipedal, big head, arms, legs, and symmetric about the long axis. Well, when you talk to evolutionary biologists, they will tell you that the odds of another, intelligent species developing essentially identical in form to humans, yet being hundreds of millions or billions of light years from now on a completely different planet with completely different chemistry and who knows what biology is going on, is almost less than 0 for that to happen. And so therefore, if they look like us, there's a possibility that, yeah, they really could be us just in the vast future, and somehow they have figured out time travel and they're coming back to the ancient past for them. Again, don't know if that's true, not true, but it is something that serious people in this space are looking into, and you can go read up on that. I encourage you to read that and decide for yourself how real or not real you think that is.
Mm-hmm. I have thought and postulate here that it's us from 200,000 years ago or 500,000 years ago, where we ascended to a technology that crumbled for some reason. And these are the leftover pygmies on an island, maybe in the backside of the moon or whatever, and propagated. But
right, there's a lot of evidence lately that civilization is much older than Egyptologists will tell you.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Göbekli Tepe is 12,700 years old. That the ruins of that structure, slightly longer than 3,500 BC. And so, what's the explanation for that structure in Turkey? It's almost 4 times as old as Egyptian civilization. A lot of researchers in this space believe that the Egyptians did not build the pyramids. They did not build the Sphinx. They discovered them and then they added to them like a lot of civilizations do and kind of claimed it for their own, but they were there many thousands of years before the Egyptians showed up. And the Sphinx, for sure, if you want to do a little bit of research into geology and go look at wind and water erosion, forget aliens, forget anything, just go look up wind and water erosion, classic freshman geology that any geologist student looks at, and go look at what water erosion looks like on rock and sandstone, and go look at what wind and erosion looks like. Okay, very, very different. Like I tell people, said any sophomore in geology can tell you the difference. Then take those, go look at pictures of the Sphinx, and tell me what's the erosion pattern? Is it water or is it wind and rain? And what you should be able to figure out with a freshman knowledge of geology is that it's clearly water erosion. So you ask yourself, when was the last time there was water in the desert in Egypt, right? Because it's clearly water erosion. Not 3,500 years ago, about 12,000 years ago, there was water there.
Hmm.
So that's why, in a
Never heard
nutshell,
that.
researchers are starting to point to that these things are very, very old.
Marty, we're on the flat earther. Move the camera a little bit. Just put Ken over there. That's been bothering me. That you're about to. We switched positions there. There
there
you
we
go, Ken.
Okay.
So heck with that UFO over my
He's
head
like-
there. We're glad that you're here today. So much new knowledge there that we don't have too many questions, I guess, today, and that's good. But we're glad that you're all watching today on Stay Curious. Wanted to just put this slide up here that these are what you consider the 4 most credible UFO incidents for you to all look up there.
This is
the
a great
bottom
place
one.
to start if you want to go look up UFO incidents that have a lot of research, a lot of physical evidence, a lot of eyewitness testimony that corroborates each other. These 4 are, in fact, the 4th one there, the Virginia UFO crash. There's a documentary on it, and it is a spectacular documentary by James Fox. And the documentary doesn't attempt to tell you what's going on, what happened in Virginia, or what the answers are. It's literally he goes down there with the team and he interviews firsthand witnesses of what happened, and he lets them tell their story, and then you decide if these 100 people are all lying, if they're making up a story and it's a big hoax, it's the greatest hoax in the history of mankind, if these 100 people can somehow coordinate their story together. And it's a fabulous documentary on that particular 1996 incident.
Excellent. I'm not going to show the other slides there, Marty, but I've enjoyed this a lot. As usual there, I wanted to mention you signed a few disclosure things over your
Few
days
of them, yes.
that you just can tell us what you can tell us. But I forgot to mention earlier, and I want y'all to know that I think it's cool that you worked on the X-36 rocket with some
X-37.
well, the X-37B
So
is our space plane, but you
Right.
tell us the astronauts you work with.
So here's the thing about the X-37. The X-37 is the civilian version. Well, so it started out as, this is kind of convoluted. So hang in there with me.
All right.
So back before there was an X-37 and anything anybody knew, back in the 90s, I worked on a classified program called the X-40. It was an Air Force project. It was what's called a direct congressional ad program, which means there's no DOD money. Congress was funneling money directly into the program. So I worked for Congress. I didn't really work for the Air Force, even though I was in the Air Force. I had believe it or not, a $40 million a year budget that was under literally my direct control. I decided how it got spent. And we were building what the public now sees called the X-37. It's a Boeing vehicle. It was
The
meant,
little space plane, you
Right.
know.
in fact, we called it the military space plane. That was the name of the program. And it was part of a larger reusable military program that we were working on. And we developed that. We did the atmospheric flight test. In fact, if you go back and look at Aviation Week in Space Technology, and you go back to 1997, they're on the cover. You'll see X-40A demo, and there's my vehicle flying its first flight. So we did that. A lot of things happened. The program got shut down. I went off to go do other things. And it eventually, 15 years later, resurfaced as the X-37. It changed hands. It went from the Air Force. It went to DARPA. It came back from DARPA into the Air Force Red Team. One thing led to another. I probably should write a book about what really happened there, because most people don't understand the details. But anyway, it ended up as what people now know as the X-37. And it's a DoD vehicle. It flies out of the Kennedy Space Center on a reusable rocket.
Two of them been built.
Yep. In a nutshell, you look at it, it looks like a mini space shuttle for obvious reasons. It's got, at the unclassified level, it's got a 1,200-pound internal payload bag, so it doesn't carry anything external, it's internal. It also has a rocket motor, and it can carry, and again, I don't know what the real number is at the moment, over 10,000 pounds of delta V capability. And so if you're familiar with the world of rockets, delta V capability is how we determine how high in orbit you can go, how
There's
changing
5
orbits
tons.
and change planes. And that's why this vehicle can not only change orbital altitude multiple times on a mission, it can do orbital plane change multiple times on a single mission, which is just an amazing capability even to this day. And it's used for a bunch of different classified missions. But that vehicle, the X-37, was actually our vehicle called the X-40. And if you want to have some fun, you take my name, military space plane, and X-40, put them all together and Google them and see what comes up. And you can go read all about some of that.
And 2 astronauts you worked with on that.
What we were doing, one of the offshoots of that, we were looking at a manned version of it because at the time, the International Space Station did not have a rescue vehicle. They were internally trying to build one called the X-38, by the way. John Murator out of Johnson Space Center was heading up that. They were having some difficulty. And so quietly, NASA approached us and said, hey, you got this really cool vehicle. We think it might turn out to be a really good rescue vehicle if we could man-rate it. And so I took a Boeing team and we went down and spent a bunch of time with NASA trying to see if that was feasible. And then 2 of my friends from the Air Force, Pam Milroy and Rick Husband, I enlisted, they got pretty interested in it, so I enlisted their help, and they got involved in helping work on the front end of that and kind of what systems would we need if we were going to have human-rated craft and also have what minimum controllability would be needed so that you could actually land like we kind of did with the space shuttle if you had to abandon the space station on a moment's notice, pile everybody in there and just deorbit and get home safely. So that was kind of fun.
Interesting. Yes, Rick Husband, of course, lost his life as commander of Columbia. He had a flight before that.
Right.
And Pam Melroy, twice a pilot and once a commander.
So I'll tell you what really, since you bring that up, while we were working on X-40, we had done the atmospheric flight test. And so the next step was a space flight test. Okay? We were going to put it on a expendable rocket while we worked on the reusable part of it and demonstrate its operation in space. Well, we went to the Air Force, and the Air Force said, we're not giving you $250 million for a Delta rocket to launch your silly space plane. Go away. Because at the time, F-22 was having major issues with Congress. And so the Air Force, the chief of staff literally thought the X-40 was a direct competitor to the F-22, even though I had personally briefed the vice chief on what we were doing. He understood it perfectly. He was a big fan, by the way. And it was not a threat. It was a comment, but they didn't see it that way. And so they wanted no part of what we were doing. So they said, you're not getting anything. So we're like, what could we do? So we decided to go to NASA and said, hey, we got a deal for you guys. If you take our vehicle, which just happens to fit in the shuttle cargo bay, by the way, because we've already done the analysis, and you fly us on a shuttle mission as a secondary payload, so we only have to pay integration fees, which is 3 or 4 million, not primary payload fee, which is like 80, 90, or 100 million, said we'll do a joint Air Force NASA mission. What we'll do is we'll load the vehicle we'll go up on there. You guys go and we'll deploy the vehicle with a robotic arm, put it out there. You go do a NASA mission. It was a 16-day mission. We had done quite a bit of planning. And the first 7 or 8 days, you guys do whatever you want, test whatever technologies you want. And they were really interested in on-orbit refueling capability. 51J had demonstrated the basics of on-orbit refueling, that you could connect and disconnect in hard orbit, but they never transferred any liquid or fuel. We said, we can help you do a no-kidding fuel transfer on orbit, and they got really excited about that. So that was going to be them and maybe some other technologies. And then we'll go rendezvous 8 days later. We'll grab it, put it back in the cargo bay. We'll do an EVA. We'll remove your NASA stuff. We'll put military stuff in there. We'll refuel it, which is your major objective. We'll relaunch it. It'll go off and do its classified 1-year mission, and the shuttle can do its thing and then come home. Okay. So we were doing
That
all
would
that.
have been an awesome shuttle mission.
So we were doing all that. They had penciled us in on the shuttle manifest, okay, 2 years out at a time. And Mike McCulley, who was the president of USA at the time, a friend of mine, I met with him and we worked out the basics of, we think we can slip you in here. Let's pencil you in. Okay. You know what shuttle mission we got penciled into? 107.
Oh, really? 107.
Yeah. And the really interesting part of this, and I don't normally tell people this because it's just.
But husband worked on it too, so that.
Yeah. So I had been working behind the scenes with my congressional friends, and I had convinced several of them that since I was considered the country's expert in the X-40, that you can't go do that shuttle mission without a payload specialist called Ken Verderame who should go on. And they had, at least in principle, said, when we get closer, we'll go talk to the head of NASA and we'll figure something out. So just get on, we'll figure it out.
Wow.
But anyway, so there's a little bit of dark space.
That is
trivia
a
for
very interesting shuttle story. None of you've heard before. That's why we have
we
Stay
haven't.
Curious here and guests here to do that. Don't have many questions there, Marty, today. But Marty, you got any question of Ken? No, you're a big fan of his. No?
No.
Okay. All right. I think he's blew him away. Everybody's so scared now.
Well, if there are
What's
questions
going
that
on
come
up
up
there?
afterwards, obviously feed them to me and I'll be
Yeah.
happy to get them answered and you can pass them
Yeah.
out on a future broadcast.
What you remember about Rick Husband?
I tell you what, Rick was exactly the kind of guy. It's pretty obvious why he got selected to be an astronaut, right? Number one, consummate professional. You know, I mean, I flew with him several times. You know, a brilliant test pilot, very meticulous, and then on what I'll call the non-technical side, right? Extremely personable, easygoing, you know, friendly, you know, what you'd think about as a classic test pilot. Nothing really bothers you. You just kind of take everything in stride, whether he's talking to, you know, a bunch of sixth graders or he's talking to a bunch of, future Navy student test pilots. I mean, really, really good at conveying complex topics and talking at the right level without talking down to the individual and making you feel like you didn't know anything and that you were missing out.
Mhm.
So just a really, really good guy, and you know, really unfortunate, but as those of us in the business know, it's a very dangerous business and bad things happen every once in a while.
Yeah, he did what he wanted to do, though, for sure.
That's right. And if you're going to go out, I guess the way to go out is doing what you love.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did.
Thank you, Ken, for a
Well, thank
great
you.
program. I always enjoy having you here.
Always glad to be
And
here.
hope that you all listened to heard a little more insight into this phenomenon. It's something that's never going to go away. Don't know if it'll really be solved, but we do know, like you say, a couple things about these unidentified objects. Is one, they're not American, they're not Chinese, they're not Russian. And they're probably not Indian either. They're another technology that might do.
They're far beyond
So what
that.
the heck are they? And they're messing with us big time. And Ken's giving you a lot of direction to go if you're interested in this. And we'll certainly keep up with it. Are there any more hearings scheduled?
They
this
don't have
congressional
another
period?
hearing scheduled yet. I know they're working, you know, I don't know what they want to do next is if they can get the whistleblower protection more solidified. There are many, many witnesses, firsthand witnesses who are currently on the program, the crash retrieval program, or were on the program, who want to testify, but they are very, very afraid, you know, not just for their safety, but for their job and everything else, because the Whistleblower Protection Act has no teeth at the moment. If they can get that sorted out, the next set of hearings should be one or more of these firsthand witnesses who can speak to say, I didn't hear about this, I'm on it, and here's what I've been doing with these non-human intelligence crash retrieval work, right? That's what people want to hear.
That's what we want to hear. We hope so soon. All right. Thank you all for watching today. Stay
Thank you.
curious. Thank you, Marty, for watching the board there. And I think I gave a shout out to almost everybody watching here today. Tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be doing some space news and views. And that Friday, Tom Usiak's going to be sitting here where Ken Verderame is, talking about whatever you want to talk about, Tommy. But we got your display of your Hasselblad remote camera system to talk about and some other things. So my pleasure to always be here with you. We've done about 1,360 some episodes in 5 years. So tell your friends we're just getting warmed up. Come and check us out. And here's some great stories from people that lived what they're talking about on Stay Curious. So until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.